Fallujah, Iraq, November 2004. The building came down like the hand of God reaching through smoke and fire, concrete turning to powder, rebar twisting into sculptures of chaos. The air tasted like copper and cordite, and the particular flavor of destruction that Marcus Volkov had been breathing since cannons first roared at Bunker Hill. Dust hung in the air like snow, except snow didn't burn your lungs, didn't carry the residue of pulverized lives and shattered futures. Marcus pulled the Marine from the rubble with hands that had done this same dance in a dozen wars across 2.5 centuries. Revolutionary, civil, both world wars, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and now this. Urban warfare in streets older than America, fighting enemies who knew every corner while Marines died learning the geography with their blood. The kid couldn't have been more than 20. Baby face under the dust and blood, freckles standing out like paint splatter against skin gone pale with shock. His eyes were blue, wide, tracking Marcus with the kind of desperate focus that meant he knew, somewhere deep in the animal part of his brain, that he was dying. The abdomen wound was catastrophic. Shrapnel from the IED had opened him like a field dressing gone wrong, organs visible, blood pooling faster than physics should allow. "Hold on, Marine." Marcus pressed both palms against the wet heat spreading across the kid's torso, tried to apply pressure to wounds that had no pressure points, no stopping them, no fixing them with anything less than a surgical theater and a team of trauma specialists. "Just hold on. Medevac's coming. You're gonna make it." Lies. Both of them knew it. But the lies were part of the ritual, part of the dance Marcus had learned in muddy fields and frozen trenches and jungle clearings. You didn't tell dying men they were dying. You told them they'd see home, see their families, see the futures they'd signed up to protect, even if those futures were bleeding into foreign soil. But the kid didn't hold on. They never did when the wound was that deep, when the light started leaving their eyes in that particular way Marcus had learned to recognize back in 1777, when he was still new to watching men die, when death was still shocking instead of inevitable. The Marine's lips moved, forming words around a mouth filling with blood. Sarah. Wedding. Spring. Small, desperate syllables trying to build futures out of breath that was running out, seconds ticking down like artillery countdowns. Marcus leaned closer, close enough to hear the whispers, close enough to smell the copper and the fear and the particular scent of a life ending too soon. "I'll tell her," Marcus promised, knowing he wouldn't, couldn't, didn't even know Sarah's last name or if she existed outside this kid's dying imagination. "I'll tell her you loved her. I'll tell her you were brave." The kid's eyes focused on Marcus for one clear moment. Saw through the dust and the pain and the morphine Marcus had already pumped into him, useless against wounds this catastrophic. Saw something that made him smile, just barely, just enough. "Thanks," the Marine whispered. Then nothing. Just weight and silence and the familiar cold that settled in Marcus's chest like winter in his bones, like all the winters of all the wars stacking up until the cold was permanent, until warm was just a memory from before he learned what it meant to hold dying strangers and feel their futures drain away. He'd been Marcus Chen back then, civilian contractor on paper, embedded asset in reality. Before that, he'd been Marcus Kowalski in Vietnam, Marcus O'Brien in Korea, Marcus Schmidt in the trenches of France. The name changed, but the war never did. Just the weapons, just the ways men found to tear each other apart. 20 years later, and Marcus still saw that Marine's face in his dreams, still heard Sarah's name whispered in the space between sleep and waking, still felt the weight of one more soldier he couldn't save added to the mountain of bodies he carried on his back. 276 years of bodies, 276 years of holding dying men and knowing their blood was on his hands even when he hadn't pulled the trigger, even when he'd done everything right, even when the universe just decided it was their time and there was nothing a werewolf alpha with supernatural healing and 2 centuries of combat experience could do about it. The present crashed back like mortar fire. October 2024, Montana wilderness. North Ridge Pack compound carved into mountain stone like a fortress, like every defensive position Marcus had ever held across 2.5 centuries of watching empires rise and fall. Different war, same grief. Marcus stood in the war room, command center and mausoleum both, surrounded by maps that told the story of American violence in ink and paper and the red dots of blood he couldn't wash away. Revolutionary War tactical positions spread across one wall, showing Breed's Hill and Saratoga and Valley Forge. Civil War troop movements on another, Gettysburg and Antietam and all the places brothers killed brothers, while Marcus tried to save both sides and succeeded at saving neither. Vietnam patrol routes with coordinates he still remembered. Grid squares where good men walked into trees that spoke with AK-47s. Iraq convoy paths marking every IED, every ambush, every place the sand drank American blood. Each map marked with small red dots where pack members had fallen, where Marcus had held them while they bled out, where he'd failed them despite 276 years of tactical experience, despite supernatural healing and enhanced senses and the accumulated wisdom of fighting in every American war since the Continental Army learned to march. 47 dots across 15 years of leadership. 48 now. The newest was still wet, still fresh, still making Marcus's hands shake with the kind of rage that had no outlet, no enemy to fight, nothing but the empty air and the weight of another brother gone. He'd marked it himself this morning, red ink on the map showing the ridge where Dominic died, where the ambush tore through his unit like grape shot through colonial lines. Precise, deliberate, the kind of tactical strike that spoke of intelligence, of planning, of an enemy who knew their movements better than they should. The kind of strike Marcus should have anticipated. Dominic, his twin, his balance, his conscience. The one who'd always believed Marcus could be better than the monster their father had trained them to be back in 1748, when the old country still remembered what wolves were, still knew to fear them, still hunted them with silver and fire and holy water that didn't work half as well as bullets. Dead 4 days now, killed in an ambush that Marcus should have seen coming, should have prevented, should have died in himself if there was any justice in the world. But there never was. Not in war. Not in 276 years of watching the good ones die while he kept walking, kept fighting, kept accumulating scars and memories and the terrible weight of being the one who survived. Marcus traced the red dot with one finger. Dominic had been point man, leading the patrol because he insisted on taking the dangerous positions, insisted on being first into the fire because that's what leaders did, what brothers did, what men who believed in something better than survival did. The Broken Fang rogues had hit them from 3 sides, classic L-shaped ambush, pinning them in the kill zone, while Marcus's reinforcements ran through 4 miles of mountain terrain, arrived 4 minutes too late, found Dominic and his mate Lydia already cold. 4 minutes. In 276 years, Marcus had learned that wars were won and lost in seconds. 4 minutes was an eternity. 4 minutes was time enough to call in artillery, evacuate wounded, reposition forces. 4 minutes was everything, and he'd been 4 minutes too slow. The door opened without ceremony. No knock, because Vincent Cross had earned the right to walk into Marcus's space unannounced through 15 years of loyal service and the particular bond that came from fighting side by side through hell. Vincent had been with him since Korea, one of the pack members who understood war not as metaphor, but as lived experience, who carried his own scars and his own red dots on his own internal maps. Vincent was Beta and Master Sergeant in all but name, second in command, and the man who translated Marcus's strategic vision into tactical orders that kept people alive. His face was shadowed, exhausted, the scar across his jaw stark white against skin gone gray, with the particular kind of stress that came from losing people you'd sworn to protect. He'd been on the reinforcement team, had run those 4 miles knowing they were too slow, had arrived to find Dominic already gone. "We found a trail," Vincent said. His voice carried the flat affect of someone delivering bad news to superior officers, someone who'd learned not to flinch when the world went to hell because flinching wasted time, and in war, time was measured in lives. Human scent, female. Headed toward James Hayes's old cabin. Something cold and sharp twisted in Marcus's gut, familiar as gunpowder, inevitable as artillery. Hayes. The name carried weight, carried history, carried the ghost of a choice Marcus had made 2 years ago that still haunted him at 3 in the morning when sleep was impossible and the past pressed down like mountains. James Hayes, wildlife conservationist on paper, Defense Intelligence Agency plant in practice. The man Marcus had ordered eliminated when intelligence suggested he was documenting the pack, building a case, preparing to expose them to a world that would see them as threats or trophies or biological curiosities, never as people, never as refugees from human violence who'd been hiding in America's wilderness since before there was an America to hide in. The man who might have been coming in peace when Vincent put 3 bullets in his chest. Hayes's daughter, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. She's taken them. Vincent's silence was answer enough. For revenge, Marcus continued, his wolf rising beneath his skin, gold bleeding into his vision. I killed her father. She has every reason to hurt what I love. Or she found them injured, Vincent offered quietly. His eyes held something that might have been doubt. And she's helping. Marcus turned on him, and the alpha command rolled off him in waves that made Vincent take an involuntary step back. I killed her father, Vincent. Shot him like a dog in the woods because we were afraid. You think his daughter is going to kiss my nephews goodnight and sing them lullabies? Vincent didn't answer. Didn't need to. They both knew what humans did when they had leverage, when they had reasons to hate, when they had the power to hurt the things that hurt them first. Gear up, Marcus said. Full assault team. We go in fast, we get the pups, and we end this. And the human? Marcus's jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. If she's harmed them, she doesn't leave that cabin alive. The lie tasted bitter even as he said it, because Marcus had learned something in 276 years of war, learned it in the faces of dying Marines and Confederate boys and Hessian mercenaries and British regulars, learned it in the weight of bodies that all felt the same, regardless of the uniform, regardless of the flag, regardless of which side of history they fell on. He'd learned that killing in hot blood was easy, killing in cold blood was harder, and killing someone who might be innocent, who might be helping, who might be the one good thing in a world gone mad with violence, that was the kind of killing that hollowed you out from the inside until there was nothing left but the monster. But Dominic was dead, and Theo and Jasper, Dominic's sons, were missing, and Marcus had made a promise to his dying brother, had held Dominic's hand while the light left his eyes, and sworn on everything sacred that he'd protect those boys with his last breath. So if Elara Hayes had to die for that promise to hold, then she'd die. And Marcus would add her face to the collection that haunted him at 3 a.m. when sleep was impossible and the weight of history pressed down like mountains. Move out, he said. We leave in 10. Vincent left without argument, and Marcus was alone again with his maps and his ghosts, and the terrible certainty that he was about to make another mistake he'd spend the next century trying to forget. The cabin sat in a clearing 20 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by pine trees that had watched this land long before Europeans brought their wars and their werewolves and their endless appetite for violence. It had belonged to James Hayes, back when James Hayes was still breathing, still walking, still believing that men and monsters could find common ground. Now it belonged to his daughter, Elara Hayes, 27 years old according to the file Vincent had pulled, former Army Reserve combat medic, 4 years of service, honorable discharge 3 years ago after an incident in Afghanistan that the paperwork danced around with careful language about insubordination and unauthorized medical treatment of civilian casualties. Translation: she'd saved someone she wasn't supposed to save, someone the rules said didn't matter, someone whose life the Army valued less than the protocol she broke to preserve it. Marcus knew the type, had been the type, back before the weight of command turned mercy into liability. Afghanistan, Kandahar Province, July 2017. The convoy blast had turned 3 Humvees into abstract art, metal twisted into shapes that metal shouldn't make, rubber burning with the thick black smoke that meant petroleum and chemicals and the particular scent of military equipment reduced to component parts. Elara Hayes, 20 years old and 6 months into her deployment as a 68 Whiskey combat medic, ran toward the carnage instead of away from it, because that's what medics did, what they were trained to do, what separated them from sane people who understood that running toward explosions was suicidal. 2 soldiers were beyond her help, bodies broken in ways that no amount of training could fix, KIA before she reached them. The 3rd was bleeding out from femoral artery damage, standard IED injury, survivable if she worked fast enough, if her hands didn't shake, if she remembered the training drilled into her at Fort Sam Houston. She remembered. Tourniquet high and tight, pressure dressing, IV access, morphine for pain management, All the steps, all the procedures, all the mechanical motions that kept you from thinking about the fact that you were 18 inches from a man's life ending, and your hands were the only thing standing between him and the darkness. He lived. Medevac got there in time, lifted him out, left Elara kneeling in sand that was red with blood and black with oil, hands shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Training giving way to the reality that she'd just held someone's future in hands that had been writing term papers about cellular biology 2 years ago. Then she heard the crying. Afghan kid, maybe 7, trapped in the rubble of a compound wall that the blast had collapsed. Civilian casualty, collateral damage, wrong place, wrong time. Her commanding officer's voice crackled through the radio, hard with the kind of command that didn't allow for argument. Hayes, we're moving out. Secondary explosions possible. Leave the civilian. The kid was crying, calling for his mother in Pashto that Elara didn't need to understand because fear sounded the same in every language, because children crying for parents was universal as gravity, as inevitable as death. She looked at the kid, looked at her unit moving to secure positions, made a choice that would cost her everything. Elara pulled the kid from the rubble, treated his injuries, carried him 200 yards to the village elder, and only then reported back to her commanding officer, who was waiting with an expression that said he already knew, already understood what this meant, already had the paperwork ready for the court-martial. Disobeying direct orders in a combat zone, endangering unit cohesion, unauthorized medical treatment of non-allied personnel. The charges were technically accurate. Elara didn't argue. Couldn't argue, had known the cost when she made the choice, had decided that living with herself after abandoning a child was worse than living with a dishonorable discharge. They gave her honorable discharge as a technicality, some mercy from officers who understood that war made you choose between impossible options, that sometimes the right thing to do was also the thing that broke every regulation. But honorable discharge with notes in your file about insubordination wasn't much better than dishonorable when it came to future employment, future trust, future anything. Elara came home to Montana, came home to a father who'd served, who understood, who said the words she needed to hear. You did the right thing, Ellie. Don't ever doubt that. Then 3 months later, James Hayes walked into the woods and didn't walk back out. Heart attack, the official report said. Sudden cardiac event, natural causes. These things happen to men in their 50s who spend too much time hiking rough terrain at altitude. Elara didn't believe it then, didn't believe it now. Knew the way her father's research had shifted in the months before his death, knew the way he'd talked about patterns in predation, in territorial behavior, in the impossible speed with which wolves that shouldn't exist in these mountains kept appearing in his trail cameras. Knew the way he'd died with his boots laced tight and his pack organized and every indication he'd been planning to come home that night, not lie down in the woods and let his heart give out. But she couldn't prove murder, couldn't prove anything except that her father was gone and she was alone, and the cabin he'd left her was full of research about wolves that didn't exist and legends that weren't supposed to be real. Until 3 hours ago, when she'd found 2 wolf pups bleeding in the woods and recognized in their eyes something that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human, was something in between that made her father's research suddenly terribly real. Either she was the worst covert operative in DIA history, or she genuinely had no idea she was sitting in the middle of what was about to become a war zone. Vincent's voice crackled through the radio comm. Overwatch in position. Thermal shows 1 adult human, 2 pup signatures. She's alone. Could be a trap, Marcus replied. Hayes was DIA. Daughter might be trained. A pause. Then Alpha, she's singing to them. Marcus went still. Singing? He shifted to wolf form, letting his senses expand beyond human limitations. Heard it then, drifting through the night air, like something from before the world learned to hate. A lullaby. Old, simple, the kind mothers had been singing to frightened children since humans first learned that darkness held teeth. Through the scope mounted on his rifle, he could see into the cabin, could see Elara Hayes on a worn couch, medical supplies scattered around her like the aftermath of triage, 2 wolf pups curled on her chest. The injured one, Theo, was bandaged with the kind of professional competence that spoke of field training, of emergency medicine performed under fire. Jasper, the smaller one, had his head tucked under Elara's chin, and she was singing. Not watching for threats, not preparing defenses, not doing any of the things a DIA operative would do if she'd just kidnapped the Alpha's nephews for leverage. Just singing, like the world outside was safe, like monsters weren't real, like her father's blood wasn't still on Marcus's conscience. Something in Marcus's chest cracked. Some wall he'd built brick by brick over 2.5 centuries, reinforced with every loss, every failure, every time he'd chosen duty over mercy and watched it cost him everything that mattered. She saved them, he realized, found them injured and alone in the woods, and instead of running, instead of calling wildlife services, instead of doing the smart thing that would have kept her safe, she'd brought them home, treated their wounds, kept them warm, showed them mercy. The way Marcus should have shown her father mercy 2 years ago when James Hayes walked into the woods carrying a peace proposal instead of a threat. "Hold position," Marcus said into the radio. "No one moves until I give the word." "Alpha?" Vincent's voice carried the weight of disagreement carefully wrapped in protocol. "We need to secure the assets." "The assets have names," Marcus snapped. "Theo and Jasper. And they're sleeping on the chest of a woman who saved their lives. We move on her, we traumatize them. We kill her, we become the monsters she probably already thinks we are. What are your orders?" Marcus watched Elara through the scope, watched her hand moving gently across Theo's bandaged side, watched the way she held them like they mattered, like they were worth the risk, like mercy was still possible in a world that had forgotten the meaning of the word. "I'm going in alone," he said, unarmed, to talk. The radio erupted in protests. Sarah Kane, his scout captain, cut through the noise with characteristic bluntness. "That's suicide, Alpha. We don't know her training, her capabilities, her intentions. I know she saved my nephews when I failed to protect them," Marcus said. "That buys her a conversation before it buys her a bullet." He shifted to human form, leaving his weapons with Vincent. Walked across the clearing wearing nothing but jeans and a thermal shirt, hands visible and empty, every movement calculated to broadcast non-aggression. The cabin door was unlocked. Of course it was, because Elara Hayes was either supremely confident in her abilities or genuinely didn't understand that she was sitting at ground zero of a supernatural powder keg. Marcus stepped inside. She woke instantly, hand going to something under the couch cushion, body shifting to put herself between him and the pups in one fluid motion that spoke of training, of muscle memory, of someone who'd learned to wake up ready to fight. The knife she pulled was silver. Of course it was. James Hayes had known what lived in these woods, had taught his daughter the old ways, the lethal ways, the ways to kill things that shouldn't exist. "Combat medic," Marcus said, reading her movements. 68 whiskey. I can tell by how you sutured the wound." Elara's eyes were hard, brown like earth and just as unyielding. "And you're what? Contractor? Mercenary?" Her voice carried the edge of someone who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer and learned not to be impressed by men who walked like killers. "I've been both," Marcus said. "Currently I'm the man whose nephews you're holding." The silence stretched like wire pulled too tight. Behind Elara, Theo whimpered in his sleep, and she shifted slightly, unconsciously protective. The movement was so natural, so instinctive, that Marcus felt something in his chest twist painfully. She already loved them. After what, 6 hours? 8? However long she'd had them, it was long enough for her to decide they were worth dying for. He could see it in the set of her shoulders, the angle of the knife, the way she'd positioned herself to take any attack meant for them. She was preparing to die, knew she couldn't win against whatever he was, but was going to try anyway. Brave or suicidal? Marcus had never quite figured out the difference. "Your father," he started, "was murdered by you," she cut him off. Her voice didn't shake, didn't waver, just stated facts with the clinical detachment of someone reporting casualties. 2 years ago. 3 bullets, left to bleed out in the woods like an animal. Marcus's jaw clenched. Yes, the admission hung in the air like smoke. No excuses, no justifications, just the truth, bare and ugly and impossible to take back. "And now you're here for them," Elara said, nodding toward the pups. "To take them back. To make sure I don't expose your secret, finish what my father started." The door opened behind Marcus. Vincent stepped in, and the guilt on his face was written in every line, every shadow, every year of carrying weight that wasn't his to carry alone. "No," Vincent said. His voice was rough, scarred by truths he'd kept silent too long. "I killed your father, not Alpha Marcus. Me." Elara's knife shifted, tracking the new threat. Marcus held up a hand, a gesture that stopped Vincent in place. I gave standing orders, Marcus said. Eliminate threats to pack exposure. Vincent interpreted your father as a threat, followed my orders. The bullet was his, but the command structure that put it there was mine. So you're both murderers, Elara said. Good to know. Your father was coming for a peace meeting, Vincent continued, and the words seemed to cost him. He was carrying a proposal. Treaty terms. Ways for our kind and yours to coexist. I didn't know that. Intelligence said he was bringing federal agents, building a case to expose us. I eliminated the threat before confirming the intel. He paused, and the weight of 2 years crashed down in the silence. I was wrong, Vincent said. I killed a good man, a man who wanted to help us, and I've carried that for 730 days. Elara stared at them both. The knife didn't lower, but something shifted in her expression. Some wall coming down or maybe just cracking, letting in the possibility that the world was more complicated than victims and villains. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because you deserve the truth, Marcus said, and because those pups on your chest are the sons of my twin brother. Dominic died 4 days ago, defending the pack from an attack we didn't see coming. His mate died beside him. Theo and Jasper are orphans now, the only family I have left. His voice cracked on the last word. He couldn't help it. Couldn't maintain the alpha mask, not here, not now, not with Dominic's son sleeping 10 feet away and the weight of another failure crushing down like avalanche. I promised him, Marcus said, held his hand while he died and swore I'd protect his boys. And I failed. They were taken in the chaos, stolen by rogues or lost in the fighting we didn't know, just knew they were gone and I'd broken another promise to another brother I couldn't save. Elara's expression flickered, something softer beneath the armor. 6 hours, Marcus continued. We searched for 6 hours before we picked up your trail. 6 hours of thinking they were dead, that I'd failed them the same way I failed Dominic, the same way I've failed every person I've ever tried to protect. He met her eyes, let her see the truth written in 276 years of accumulated grief. And then we found them here, he said, alive, bandaged, safe, because a woman whose father I killed decided mercy mattered more than revenge. I didn't know, Elara said quietly. The knife lowered slightly. When I found them, I didn't know what they were. Just saw 2 babies bleeding in the woods. One of them was going to die if I didn't act. Theo, Marcus said. She nodded. Subclavian laceration. He'd have bled out in 20 minutes. I did field surgery. Stabilized him. Brought them both here because it was warm and I had supplies and I took an oath. What oath? Elara's laugh was bitter. The one that says I don't get to choose which babies deserve saving based on what species they are or who their family killed. I'm a medic. That's what we do. We save people, even when it's stupid, even when it costs us everything. Even when the people you're saving are the children of monsters? Especially then, Elara said, because someone has to break the cycle. Someone has to look at a bleeding kid and decide mercy matters more than hate. Marcus felt something in his chest crack wider. Felt the wall he'd built to survive 2.5 centuries of war and loss and failure start to crumble under the weight of a woman who'd chosen compassion when the world gave her every reason to choose violence. What do you want? He asked. Elara looked down at the pups, at Theo's bandaged side, and Jasper's small form curled trustingly against her. Let me keep them, she said. 2 weeks, until Theo heals completely. Then we talk about what comes next. That's not how this works, Vincent said. Pack law requires pack raising. Humans who know our secret die, Elara finished. I know. I've read my father's research. I know what you are, what you can do, what you've spent centuries hiding from people like me. She met Marcus's eyes. But those boys on my chest don't know any of that, she said. They just know they're scared and hurting, and they fell asleep on someone who made them feel safe. You want to traumatize them by ripping them away from the first comfort they've found since their parents died? Go ahead, take them. Add that to your list of failures. The words hit like bullets. Marcus flinched despite himself. Or, Elara continued, her voice softening, you trust me. For 2 weeks. Let me do what I'm trained to do. Let me heal Theo, keep them both stable, make sure they're strong enough to handle whatever transition comes next. And what do you get out of this? Marcus asked. Elara's smile was sad. I get to honor my father's legacy. He believed your kind deserved protection, not persecution. Believed coexistence was possible. I can't bring him back, can't undo what you did. But I can try to prove he was right. Vincent shook his head. It's too dangerous. She could expose us, weaponize the pups, sell us out to DIA. I could, Elara agreed, but I won't, because unlike you, I don't make decisions based on fear. The silence that followed was broken only by Theo's soft breathing, Jasper's small snores, the sound of 2 orphaned wolf pups sleeping peacefully on the chest of a woman who should have been their enemy. Marcus looked at Vincent. His beta's face was torn between protocol and something that might have been hope. Looked at Elara, at the way she held the pups like they mattered, like they were worth the risk. Thought about Dominic's last words. Stop trying to save everyone alone. Trust others, or you'll destroy yourself. 2 weeks, Marcus said. You keep them here. I provide supplies, security, anything you need. You treat Theo's wound, keep them both stable. We maintain communication protocol. Any sign of threat, any indication you're compromised, I extract them immediately. Elara nodded. Fair terms. You'll wear this. Marcus pulled a silver pendant from his pocket. Wolf's head etched in metal older than America. It carries my scent. Any shifter who crosses your path will know you're under my protection. Harm you. Answer to me. He held it out. Elara took it, fingers brushing his. The contact sent electricity up Marcus's arm, made his wolf surge with recognition that he shoved down ruthlessly. One more thing, he said. If you betray us, if you expose us, if you harm those boys in any way, you'll kill me, Elara finished. I know. Get in line. No, Marcus said quietly. I'll live with it. Add you to the collection of people I've killed who didn't deserve it. Carry your face alongside your father's. Let it eat me alive for the next century. He paused. So please, he said. And the word cost him. Don't make me do that. Don't make me be the monster you already think I am. Elara stared at him for a long moment. Then she slipped the pendant over her head. The silver settled against her skin, like it belonged there. I think, she said slowly, that you're already doing a pretty good job of being your own monster. You don't need my help. Marcus flinched. She was right. 276 years of wars and failures and bodies piled on bodies had carved him into something barely human, something that knew how to kill and command and survive, but had forgotten how to live, how to trust, how to believe that mercy was possible in a world built on violence. Dominic had tried to teach him, tried to show him there was another way, and Marcus had let him die before learning the lesson. Maybe, Marcus said, but those boys deserve better than monsters. So for 2 weeks we try. We see if your father was right. We see if coexistence is possible. And if it's not, then we face that when it comes, Marcus said, together. Vincent made a noise that might have been disagreement or disbelief or exhausted resignation. But he didn't argue, didn't challenge, just stood there with the weight of James Hayes's death on his shoulders and the faint, fragile hope that maybe this time they could do something right. Marcus turned to leave, paused at the door. What made you save them? He asked. Really? When you found them in the woods, bleeding and alone, what made you decide to help instead of walk away? Elara looked down at the pups, at Theo's small face peaceful in sleep, at Jasper's paw twitching with dreams. Because someone once told me, she said softly, that you can't save everyone, that you do your best and then you let go. She met Marcus's eyes. But I've never been good at letting go, she said. Never been good at walking away from things that need saving, even when it's stupid, even when it costs me everything. It's why I got discharged. It's why I'm alone. It's why I'll probably die young and stupid. She smiled, and it was the saddest thing Marcus had seen in 276 years. But at least I'll die knowing I tried, she said. Can you say the same? Marcus left without answering. Couldn't answer. Didn't have words for the way her question carved through every defense he'd built, every wall he'd erected, every lie he'd told himself about duty and sacrifice and the cost of keeping people safe. Outside, the pack waited. 40 shifters in human and wolf form, armed and ready for war. They looked to him for orders, for direction, for the certainty that came with Alpha Command. Stand down, Marcus said. The human, Elara Hayes, is under my protection. She'll care for the pups temporarily. Anyone who harms her answers to me personally. The shock rippled through them like earthquake. Sarah stepped forward, her face tight with disbelief. Alpha, you can't be serious. She's human. She knows what we are. Protocol demands. Protocol has gotten us where exactly? Marcus cut her off. His voice was Alpha Command, the kind that bent necks and demanded submission. Gotten Dominic killed, Gotten James Hayes murdered on his way to peace talks? Gotten us hunted and hiding for 2 centuries while we pretend we're the only monsters in these woods? Silence. I'm tired, Marcus said, and the exhaustion in his voice was older than nations. Tired of killing first and asking questions never. Tired of burning bridges before we know if they'll hold our weight. Tired of being so afraid of humans that we become the very monsters they think we are. He looked at each of them, let them see the weight he carried. Elara Hayes saved my nephews when I failed to protect them, he said. Showed them mercy when she had every reason to choose revenge. That earns her a chance. 2 weeks. If she proves trustworthy, we reevaluate everything. If she betrays us, he left the threat hanging. Vincent will coordinate supply runs, he continued. Sarah, your scouts maintain perimeter watch. No one approaches the cabin without my authorization. No one threatens her. No one makes this harder than it already is. He paused. Dominic believed coexistence was possible, Marcus said quietly. Believed we could be better than our worst instincts. He died before proving it. So we're going to prove it for him. We're going to try. And if we fail? Then we fail knowing we tried, Marcus said, which is more than we've done in 200 years. He walked away before anyone could argue, before the cracks in his armor showed too clearly, before the weight of what he'd just done crushed him completely. Behind him, Vincent gave orders, coordinates, protocols. The pack dispersed slowly, reluctantly, but they dispersed. Because Marcus was alpha, an alpha word was law, even when that law made no sense, even when it broke every tradition they'd built their survival on. Marcus made it 50 yards into the woods before his legs gave out, dropped to his knees in the pine needles, and let the weight of 276 years crash down like mountains. Dominic's face, the Marine's face, James Hayes's face, 48 red dots on 48 maps, every person he'd failed, everyone he'd lost, everyone who'd trusted him to keep them safe and paid for that trust with their lives. And now Elara Hayes, holding his nephews, offering mercy he didn't deserve, asking questions he couldn't answer. Can you say you tried? No, he couldn't. Because trying meant risking, and risking meant failing, and failing meant more red dots, more faces, more weight on shoulders already breaking under the load. But Dominic's last words echoed in the space between heartbeats. Trust others, or you'll destroy yourself. Marcus had been destroying himself for 276 years, building walls so high he'd trapped himself inside them, choosing duty over mercy, protocol over compassion, survival over living. And it had gotten him here, alone in the woods, 48 red dots and counting. A pack that followed out of fear more than love. A life measured in wars fought and bodies buried, and the endless grinding weight of trying to keep everyone safe by trusting no one. Maybe, Marcus thought, it was time to try something different. Maybe it was time to trust, even if it killed him, especially if it killed him. Because dying while trying to be better was more honorable than living as the monster he'd become. Marcus pushed to his feet, wiped his eyes, let his wolf rise enough to steady him, to give him the strength to walk back to the compound and face his pack and live with the choice he'd made. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to see if Elara Hayes could succeed where 2 centuries of violence had failed. 2 weeks to see if mercy was still possible in a world that had forgotten the meaning of the word. 2 weeks to see if Marcus Volkov could save himself before the weight of history crushed him completely. In the cabin behind him, Elara held the pups and hummed lullabies, and didn't know that she'd just become the most important person in a war that had been fought since before America learned to dream. Didn't know that Marcus's choice to trust her was the first crack in walls built over centuries. Didn't know that everything was about to change. But she would. They both would, and the world would never be the same. The first supply delivery came at dawn on day 2, carried by a wolf the color of midnight, with amber eyes that tracked Elara's every movement like targeting systems. The wolf dropped a leather satchel on the porch, held her gaze for 3 long seconds that felt like evaluation or threat assessment or both, then vanished into the tree line with the kind of speed that made Elara's combat instincts scream danger even as her rational mind tried to process what she'd just witnessed. A werewolf, an actual werewolf, delivering formula and medical supplies like some kind of supernatural postal service. The absurdity of it hit her all at once, standing on the porch in pre-dawn cold with 2 wolf pups sleeping inside and the weight of her father's death pressing down like mountains. This was her life now. This was the world she'd stepped into when she decided mercy mattered more than safety, when she chose to save instead of survive. Inside the satchel, powdered formula specifically designed for shifter metabolism, gauze and antiseptic, fresh bandages, protein bars and dried meat, canned goods that would last weeks, and a note in sharp, angular handwriting that she recognized from the previous night. Mix 1 scoop formula with warm water 3 times daily. Keep bandage clean and dry. Change every 12 hours. Theo's temperature should stay below 102. Above that, use emergency contact number. Vincent will deliver supplies each morning at dawn. Don't try to follow him. The perimeter is watched. No signature. Didn't need one. Marcus's command presence came through even in written instructions, the kind of precision that spoke of military training, of someone who'd spent lifetimes learning that details meant the difference between success and catastrophic failure. Elara carried the satchel inside, found Theo and Jasper awake and whimpering on the couch where she'd left them. Theo's bandage was clean, no bleeding through, which meant her field surgery had held through the night. Small victories. She'd learned in Afghanistan to measure success in increments, in patients who made it another hour, another day, another breath. "Come here, babies," she murmured, scooping them both up. Her back protested, muscles sore from sleeping upright with 15 pounds of wolf pup on her chest, but the alternative had been putting them down and listening to them cry. She'd tried that once around 3 in the morning, lasted maybe 10 minutes before the sound of their distress pulled her back to the couch, back to the position that told them someone was there, someone cared, someone wouldn't abandon them the way the world had already abandoned them twice. Orphans recognizing orphans. That's what this was. Elara had lost her father 2 years ago. These pups had lost both parents 4 days ago. They understood each other in the way that grief creates understanding, in the language of loss that transcends species. She mixed the formula exactly as instructed, watched as both pups attacked their bottles with the kind of desperate hunger that meant they hadn't eaten properly since before their parents died. Theo was gentler, more cautious, still favoring his injured side. Jasper was all energy and appetite, trying to drink and climb her simultaneously. "You're going to be trouble, aren't you?" Elara said to Jasper, who responded by trying to eat her hair. "Yeah, definitely trouble." The routine established itself over the next 3 days. Dawn deliveries from the midnight wolf who never stayed, never spoke if wolves could speak, just dropped supplies and disappeared. Morning feedings and bandage changes and the careful monitoring of Theo's wound that was healing faster than any injury she'd ever treated. Tissue knitting together with supernatural efficiency that made her medical training feel inadequate and primitive. Afternoon naps where both pups refused to sleep anywhere except on her, their combined weight pinning her to the couch while she tried to read her father's research with one hand and keep them from falling with the other. Evening feedings. Night watch where she dozed in shifts, waking every 2 hours to check Theo's temperature and make sure both pups were breathing, were safe, were still alive in a world that seemed determined to take everything she tried to protect. Marcus didn't come back. She told herself she wasn't waiting for him, wasn't listening for footsteps on the porch, wasn't disappointed when dawn broke and it was just the midnight wolf again with supplies and silence. Told herself she didn't care that the man who'd killed her father was staying away, giving her space, trusting her with his nephews despite having every reason not to trust her. Told herself a lot of lies that didn't quite cover the truth underneath, that she was curious about him, that his grief had recognized something in hers, that the weight he carried was familiar because she carried her own version, lighter maybe, but no less crushing for all that. Day 4, the midnight wolf didn't come alone. Elara heard them before she saw them, the sound of multiple bodies moving through underbrush with the kind of tactical precision that meant training, meant coordination, meant threat assessment in progress. She grabbed the silver knife, positioned herself between the door and the pups, and waited. 3 wolves emerged from the tree line. The midnight wolf she recognized. The other 2 were new. One was smaller, female, with gray fur that caught the dawn light like steel. The other was massive, scarred, with amber eyes that held intelligence that was distinctly, unsettlingly human. The gray wolf shifted first, bones cracking and reforming with sounds that made Elara's medic brain catalog compound fractures and joint dislocations, even though she knew this was normal for them, was natural, was what their bodies did. Within seconds, a woman stood where the wolf had been, naked, unashamed. watching Elara with eyes that held calculation and something that might have been hostility or might just have been wariness. She was maybe 30, athletic build, with scars across her shoulders that looked like claw marks, like she'd survived close-quarters combat with something that had meant to kill her and nearly succeeded. Her voice when she spoke was rough, smoke-damaged, or maybe just worn down by years of shouting commands over gunfire and chaos. "I'm Sarah Kane, Scout Captain, Dominic's friend." The way she said Dominic's name carried weight, carried history, carried the kind of grief that came from losing someone who mattered more than just as a packmate. Elara recognized it because she'd heard that same tone in her own voice when she talked about her father, that particular quality of loss that couldn't be faked or hidden or smoothed over with time. "Elara Hayes," she replied, not lowering the knife. "Combat medic, their temporary guardian." Sarah's eyes flicked to the pups, to Theo's bandaged side, to the way Jasper was already climbing Elara's leg despite the tension in the air. "Temporary," she repeated. "That's what Marcus said. 2 weeks. Then what?" "Then we figure it out." Sarah stepped closer, and Elara's grip tightened on the knife. The other 2 wolves, still in animal form, flanked her. Pack tactics, coordinated movement. They weren't just visiting, they were testing. "You saved them," Sarah said. "Theo would have died without medical intervention. Jasper would have frozen or starved. You didn't have to do that." "I'm a medic. That's what we do." "Even when the patient's family killed your father?" The question hung in the air like cordite smoke, sharp and acrid and impossible to ignore. Elara met Sarah's eyes and saw the real question underneath. Not about mercy or duty or medical oaths, about whether Elara was playing a long game, building trust to exploit it later, setting up some kind of revenge that would hurt worse than bullets because it would use innocence as a weapon. "Especially then," Elara said quietly, "because someone has to break the cycle. Someone has to look at babies and decide they matter more than the sins of their family." Sarah stared at her for a long moment. Then she nodded, something shifting in her expression. "Dominic used to say things like that, used to drive Marcus crazy with it. All that talk about mercy and second chances and finding another way." She paused, and grief flickered across her face like lightning. "He died believing it," Sarah continued. "Died thinking there was something better than the endless cycle of violence. Maybe he was right. Maybe you're proof he was right. Or maybe I'm just naive," Elara said. "Maybe I'll get myself killed and prove Marcus right about humans being too soft for this world." Sarah's smile was sharp. "If you were soft, you'd have run the first night. When 40 wolves surrounded this cabin and Marcus walked through your door like death in jeans, but you stood your ground, pulled a silver knife on an alpha, negotiated terms. That's not soft. That's tactical thinking under pressure." She glanced at the midnight wolf, who shifted to human form. Vincent. Beta. The one who'd confessed to killing Elara's father, who'd carried that weight for 2 years before finally speaking it aloud. He looked older in daylight, 50s maybe, with silver threading through dark hair and scars that told stories of violence survived. His face was weathered, carved by wind and time and the weight of too many hard choices. When he met Elara's eyes, she saw genuine remorse there, the kind that couldn't be faked. "I brought extra medical supplies," Vincent said, his voice careful, formal, like he was addressing a superior officer instead of the daughter of the man he'd killed. "Antibiotics in case of infection, pain medication, suture kit." He set a pack on the porch, maintained distance, respected her space in a way that spoke of someone who understood boundaries, who knew he'd forfeited the right to casual approach when he put 3 bullets in James Hayes. "Thank you," Elara said. Then, because the question had been burning for 3 days, "Why did you confess? You could have let me hate Marcus, could have stayed silent. Instead, you took the blame. Why?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "Because blame belongs where it belongs. Marcus gave orders to protect the pack. I executed those orders with prejudice, without confirming intel, without giving your father a chance to explain his presence. That's on me, not him." "But he created the culture that made that choice possible," Elara said. "He built a system where shoot first was protocol, where humans were threats by default. That blood's on his hands too." "Yes," Vincent agreed simply. "It is. We both carry it. We both live with it. But you deserve to know who pulled the trigger, who made the final call. That was me." The honesty was brutal, unflinching, the kind of accountability that Elara recognized from military culture. Own your mistakes. Face the consequences. Don't hide behind orders or protocols or the chain of command when your choices end lives. My father was coming for peace talks, Elara said. Did you know that? Vincent's face went gray. No. Intelligence said he was bringing federal agents, building a case for exposure. I eliminated what I believed was an existential threat to the pack. He paused, and the weight of 2 years crashed down in the silence. I've reviewed the actual intel since then, Vincent continued. Found the anonymous tip that triggered the order. It was false. Deliberately false. Someone in the pack wanted your father dead, wanted to prevent those peace talks. I was the weapon they used. Elara's blood went cold. Someone in your pack set him up? We believe so, Sarah said. Vincent's been investigating for 2 years. Trail goes cold at a communication relay used by multiple pack members. Could be anyone. Could be conspiracy. We don't know yet. So my father died, Elara said slowly, because someone in your pack wanted war instead of peace, wanted to keep you isolated, keep you afraid, keep you dependent on Marcus's protection. That's the working theory, Vincent confirmed. And Marcus knows this? He knows, Sarah said. Has known for 6 months. It's eating him alive. Every decision he makes now, he questions. Every order he gives, he wonders if it's based on real intel or manipulation. It's paralyzing him, making him second-guess everything. Including trusting me, Elara said. Especially trusting you, Sarah replied, because if there's a traitor in the pack, if someone's manipulating information, then bringing you into the fold could be exactly what they want. Could be setting up another failure. Another death he'll blame himself for. Elara looked at the pups, at Theo and Jasper, who were watching the adults with eyes too intelligent for their age, too aware. They understood tension even if they didn't understand words, understood that the people talking were discussing things that mattered, that would shape their futures. What do you think? Elara asked Sarah. Am I a trap? Am I the next mistake? Sarah's smile was feral. I think if you were a trap, you'd have sprung it already. I think you're exactly what you appear to be. A medic who can't walk away from wounded babies. A soldier who disobeyed orders to save a life. Someone who values mercy over safety. She paused. Which makes you either the best thing that's happened to this pack in decades, Sarah said, or the thing that's going to get Marcus killed. Time will tell which. The third wolf shifted. Male, older, with gray in his fur that translated to silver in his hair when he took human form. He was maybe 60 in appearance, which meant he could be centuries old, with the kind of scars that spoke of surviving things that should have killed him. I'm Garrett Stone, he said. Elder Counsel, former military, back when military meant different things. His voice carried the particular cadence of command, of someone who'd led men and expected obedience and gotten it through competence rather than fear. He studied Elara the way a general might study terrain, looking for advantages and vulnerabilities and the truth under the surface presentation. You've created a problem, Garrett said. Not an accusation, just statement of fact. Marcus has broken protocol to accommodate you. Vincent has revealed operational intelligence to a civilian. Sarah has accepted you without proper vetting. The pack is divided on whether you're asset or liability. And you? Elara asked. What do you think? Garrett's expression didn't change. I think Dominic believed in the possibility of human-shifter coexistence, died believing it. And I think Marcus is trying to honor that belief by trusting you. Whether that trust is justified remains to be seen. He nodded to the pups. But those boys are pack, Garrett continued, which means their well-being supersedes politics. You're keeping them alive, keeping them stable, doing work our own people couldn't do because we were too busy fighting and grieving. That earns you time, earns you a chance. How much time? Elara asked. As long as it takes, Garrett said, or until you prove untrustworthy, whichever comes first. They left after that, 3 wolves disappearing into the forest with the same tactical precision they'd arrived with. Elara stood on the porch long after they were gone, processing the conversation, the revelations, the weight of understanding that her father's death wasn't just murder. It was conspiracy. Was someone in the pack deliberately sabotaging peace, deliberately maintaining conflict, deliberately keeping everyone afraid and isolated and dependent? Which meant his death and her current situation were pieces of a larger game she didn't understand yet. Inside, the pups were crying. Elara went to them, scooped them up, held them close while they nuzzled into her neck. Whatever conspiracy was playing out around her, whatever machinations were happening in pack politics, these two were innocent. were just babies who needed someone to care, someone to fight for them, someone to stand between them and the darkness. She could do that, had trained for it, had taken oaths for it, even if it killed her, especially if it killed her. Because dying while protecting innocence was more honorable than living safe while they suffered. Marcus came that night. Elara heard him before she saw him, footsteps on the porch that were deliberately loud, announcing his presence, giving her time to prepare. Not the approach of a predator, the approach of someone who respected boundaries, who understood that showing up unannounced at night would trigger combat instincts in a former soldier living alone in the woods. She opened the door before he knocked, found him standing in moonlight that turned his features to sculpture, all sharp edges and shadows and the weight of someone who hadn't slept properly in days. Maybe weeks, maybe decades. "How are they?" Marcus asked. No greeting, no small talk, just the question that mattered, the one that had probably been eating at him since he walked away 3 nights ago. "Healing," Elara said. "Theo's wound is closing faster than I've ever seen. Shifter metabolism is remarkable. Jasper's fine, eating well, sleeping well. They ask for you. They can't talk yet. They whimper towards the door every time they hear something in the woods," Elara said. "They know your scent, know you're out there watching. They want their uncle." Something crossed Marcus's face, too quick to name but painful to witness. "I can't," he said. "Can't get attached. Can't let them depend on me when I've already proven I can't protect the people I love." "That's bullshit," Elara said flatly. "You're not staying away to protect them. You're staying away to protect yourself. Because if you don't get close, it won't hurt as much when they're taken from you, when the next ambush comes, when the next failure adds another red dot to your collection." Marcus's eyes flashed gold. "You don't know anything about me." "I know grief," Elara said. "I know survivor's guilt. I know what it's like to hold someone's life in your hands and feel it slip away despite everything you do, every skill you have, every oath you've taken. I know what it's like to wake up at 3 in the morning and see their faces, hear their voices, wonder if you could have done something different, been something better." She paused. "And I know what it's like to use that guilt as armor," Elara continued, "to tell yourself you don't deserve connection, don't deserve comfort, don't deserve anything except the weight of carrying all that death alone. Because if you suffer enough, maybe it'll balance the scales. Maybe it'll make up for the lives you couldn't save." Marcus stared at her. The gold in his eyes flickered, faded, left behind something raw and human and desperately tired. "Does it?" he asked quietly. "Does suffering balance anything?" "No," Elara said. "It just makes you hollow, makes you so focused on surviving that you forget how to live, turns you into something that walks and fights and follows protocol but isn't really there anymore, just going through motions, just marking time until the next war, the next loss, the next red dot." "Is that what happened to you?" Marcus asked. "In Afghanistan?" Elara thought about the convoy blast, about the soldiers she saved and the child she chose over orders, about the way she'd come home to find her father dead and her future empty and nothing but an old cabin and research about monsters that turned out to be real. "Yes," she said simply. "That's exactly what happened. I'm still trying to find my way back, still trying to figure out how to be something more than just the medic who couldn't save everyone, who had to choose." Marcus stepped closer, and the moonlight carved shadows across his face that made him look older than centuries, older than time. "I've been choosing for 276 years," he said. "Every war, every battle, every moment someone had to die so someone else could live. I've made thousands of choices, and I carry every single one." "That's not sustainable," Elara said. "No," Marcus agreed. "It's not. But I don't know how to stop, don't know how to lead without that weight, don't know how to be responsible for lives without carrying every loss like penance." "Maybe you start by coming inside," Elara said, "by holding your nephews, by letting them know you're still here, still fighting, still caring even though it hurts." She paused. "Maybe you start by trusting that you're not alone in this anymore," she said. Marcus looked at her, really looked, and Elara saw the moment something cracked in his armor. Some wall that had been built brick by brick over centuries, reinforced with every loss, every failure, every time he chose duty over mercy. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "How to trust, how to let people close when everyone I've loved has been taken, when my presence makes people targets, when caring about something is the best way to ensure it's destroyed." "Then learn," Elara said. "Learn with me. Learn with Theo and Jasper. Learn with your pack. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to try. Marcus's hand came up, cupped her face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone who'd spent centuries learning how to kill. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and Elara felt the calluses there, the scars, the evidence of violence survived. "You're dangerous," he said softly. "You make me want things I swore I'd never want again. Make me believe things I learned were lies. Make me think that maybe there's still something worth fighting for beyond just survival." "Is that bad?" Elara asked. "It's terrifying," Marcus said, "because the last time I let myself want something, let myself believe in something beyond duty, it was taken from me, ripped away, used against me. And I learned that caring was the greatest weakness, that love was a weapon enemies could use to destroy you more efficiently than any bullet." "Love isn't weakness," Elara said. "Fear of love is weakness. Refusing to try because you might fail is weakness. Walking away from your nephews because you're afraid of losing them is weakness." She met his eyes. "You want to honor Dominic's memory?" she said. "Then be the man he believed you could be. Be the leader who chooses mercy over protocol, who trusts instead of suspects, who builds instead of just protecting, who lives instead of just surviving." Marcus stared at her, and something in his expression shattered completely. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, and Elara felt him shaking, felt 276 years of accumulated weight pressing down, trying to crush him, trying to break him under the burden of being strong for everyone, being perfect for everyone, never showing weakness, because weakness meant death. "I'm so tired," he whispered. "So tired of fighting, so tired of watching people die, so tired of being alone even when I'm surrounded by pack." "Then stop being alone," Elara said, her arms coming up to hold him. "Let someone help carry it. Let me help carry it." They stood like that for a long time, two soldiers who'd learned that survival meant never showing weakness, finally allowing themselves to be vulnerable. To admit that strength sometimes looked like asking for help, that courage sometimes meant trusting someone else with the parts of yourself that were breaking. Inside, the pup started crying. Marcus pulled back, wiped his eyes, tried to put the armor back on, but Elara caught his hand. "Come meet your nephews properly," she said, "not as Alpha, as Uncle Marcus, as family." Marcus hesitated. Then he nodded, let her lead him inside, let her guide him to the couch where Theo and Jasper were fussing. The moment they saw him, both pups went silent. Then they exploded into motion, scrambling over each other to reach him, yipping and whimpering and climbing his chest the moment he sat down. "Hey, little warriors," Marcus said, and his voice was different now, softer, less alpha command and more just exhausted uncle trying not to cry. "You're getting so big." Theo nuzzled into Marcus's neck, and Jasper tried to eat his ear. Marcus laughed, actual laughter that transformed his face from something hard and dangerous into something almost boyish, almost young, despite the centuries written in his eyes. Elara watched them, watched the way Marcus held the pups like they were precious, like they were worth protecting, like maybe he was finally starting to believe that caring about something didn't automatically doom it. Watched the way Theo's small paw came up to pat Marcus's face, the way Jasper curled against his chest and fell asleep immediately, the way family looked when it wasn't performing, wasn't following protocol, was just existing in the quiet moments between wars. "This is what Dominic wanted," Marcus said quietly. "Wanted me to understand family. Wanted me to stop measuring worth in tactical advantage and start measuring it in moments like this, in connection, in love." He looked at Elara. "He'd like you," Marcus said. "Would have loved how you stepped between fighting alphas to protect children. Would have called it the bravest thing he'd ever seen. Would have told me I was an idiot if I didn't recognize what you represent." "What do I represent?" Elara asked. "Hope," Marcus said simply. "The possibility that we can be better than our worst instincts. That mercy isn't weakness. That trust isn't suicide. That maybe, after 276 years of war, there's finally a chance for something different." He paused. "Or maybe you're just going to get us all killed," he said. But there was something like hope in his voice. "And I'm too tired to care anymore." "That's the spirit," Elara said dryly. Marcus smiled, and it was real, genuine, the first truly unguarded expression she'd seen from him. Then his expression shifted, became serious again. "Sarah told you about the conspiracy," he said, "about the traitor in the pack." "Yes." "There's going to be another attack," Marcus continued. "The Broken Fang rogues who killed Dominic, they're not done. Garrett Stone leads them. He was my mentor once, taught me tactics, strategy, leadership. Then he decided hiding from humans was cowardice, decided we should conquer instead of coexist. He looked at the pups. Dominic's death was a message, Marcus said. They're coming for the pack, for everything we've built. And I don't know who I can trust because someone inside is feeding them information, sabotaging defenses, ensuring we're vulnerable. Then we figure it out, Elara said. Together. You stop trying to solve everything alone. You delegate. You trust the people who've earned it. You build redundancy into your intelligence networks. You do what good commanders do. You make yourself less of a single point of failure. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Tactical advice from a medic? Tactical advice from someone who watched good officers get killed because they tried to micromanage everything instead of building competent teams, Elara said. You're not invincible. You're not infallible. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can build a system that survives your mistakes. Dominic used to say the same thing, Marcus said softly. Then maybe you should listen, Elara replied, because he was right. And his sons deserve to grow up in a pack that's strong because of structure, not just because of one impossibly overburdened alpha who's trying to carry 276 years of war on his shoulders alone. Marcus looked at her, and something shifted in his eyes, something that might have been respect or gratitude or the beginning of trust. Stay with me tonight, he said. Not like that. Just stay. Help me with them. Teach me how to do this. How to be an uncle instead of a commander. How to be family. Elara nodded. I can do that. They spent the night on the couch, Marcus and Elara with 2 wolf pups sprawled across them like warm weights anchoring them to something real, talked in voices barely above whispers about tactics and grief and the weight of choices that echo across centuries. Tell me about Dominic, Elara said. Not how he died, how he lived. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hand moving absently through Theo's fur. He was born 4 minutes after me. Those 4 minutes made all the difference. I came out fighting. He came out laughing. We spent 276 years trying to balance each other. Marcus's voice carried the weight of centuries. Dominic believed in goodness despite everything we'd seen, still thought coexistence was possible, still saw potential instead of threat. It drove me insane, his refusal to accept that survival meant being harder than everyone trying to kill us. He paused, and grief flickered across his face. We fought constantly about it, Marcus continued. Strategy meetings that turned into debates about whether we were protectors or predators. He'd push me toward compassion. I'd push him toward safety. We balanced. When I went too far toward ruthless, he pulled me back. Then he died, and I lost my balance, lost my conscience, lost the only person who could tell me I was wrong and make me listen. You're listening to me, Elara pointed out. Marcus looked at her, gold flickering in his eyes. You remind me of him. That same belief that mercy matters, that same willingness to risk everything for what's right. Is that why you're trusting me? No, Marcus said. I'm trusting you because you saved his sons when I failed to protect them, because you chose mercy when revenge would have been easier, because you're showing me compassion I don't deserve. He shifted carefully, mindful of the sleeping pups. Tell me about your father, he said, about James Hayes, not as the man we killed, as the man you knew. Elara felt the familiar ache. He was a soldier first. Career Army, retired colonel. 3 tours Iraq, 2 Afghanistan. Came home with PTSD that made him wake up swinging. But he was also the gentlest man I'd ever known. With animals, with nature, with anything that couldn't fight back. She smiled despite the pain. He believed you were endangered, Elara continued. Deserved protection, not persecution. Used to say that anything surviving centuries of human expansion deserved respect, deserved a chance to exist. His last entry talked about attempting contact, about treaty being possible. Her voice went quiet. He was bringing peace, she said, and someone in your pack made sure he died before he could offer it. Marcus's expression hardened. We'll find them. The traitor. By doing what Dominic always said I should. Stop trying to solve everything alone. Build a team I trust. Delegate. He looked at Theo and Jasper. And by being the kind of leader these boys can be proud of, he said. Not paranoid. One who builds something worth protecting. Who chooses hope over fear. That's terrifying, Marcus admitted, because hope means vulnerability, means risking, means I might fail again, lose again. But you're going to try anyway, Elara said. Marcus smiled, tired and raw. Yeah, because you're right. Because Dominic was right. Because these boys deserve a world where mercy is possible, where violence isn't the only answer to fear. He reached over, took Elara's hand. And because you make me believe it's possible, he said, make me want to be the man Dominic thought I could be. You are that man, Elara said, just buried under 276 years of trauma. But he's still there, still fighting. How do I stop it from killing me? You let other people help carry it, Elara said. You build that team. You accept that leadership isn't about being invincible. It's about building something that survives your mistakes. They talked through the night, trading stories of wars fought and lessons learned. Marcus told her about Yorktown and Gettysburg, about watching America grow while he hid in margins, protecting pack territories, about the weight of being old enough to have perspective, but young enough to feel every loss like the first. Elara told him about Afghanistan, about the kid she'd saved at the cost of her career, about coming home to find her father dead and her purpose empty, about learning that doing the right thing didn't guarantee the right outcome. By dawn, something had shifted. Some wall had crumbled. Some possibility had opened. Marcus stood to leave, picked up Theo, who'd stirred, whispering something in a language Elara didn't recognize. Theo settled, went back to sleep in his uncle's arms. He trusts you, Elara said. He shouldn't, Marcus replied. Everyone who trusts me ends up hurt. Or maybe saved, Elara countered. Maybe your perspective is skewed. Maybe you're so focused on the ones you lost that you can't see the hundreds you kept alive. He kissed her forehead then, gentle and reverent. I'll be back tonight, he said. We'll talk strategy, figure out how to root out the traitor. Thank you, he added at the door. For this, for them, for seeing me as something more than the monster I've convinced myself I am. You're not a monster, Elara said. You're just someone who's been fighting so long you forgot there was anything worth fighting for beyond the fight itself. Marcus smiled, sad and maybe hopeful. Teach me how to remember. Then he was gone, disappearing into the dawn, leaving Elara alone with 2 sleeping pups and the weight of understanding that she'd just become something she'd never planned to be. Not just a temporary guardian, a partner, a co-conspirator in trying to save a man who'd spent centuries trying to save everyone else and had forgotten how to save himself. Outside, hidden in the tree line where dawn light filtered through pine needles, Vincent watched the cabin and thought about redemption, about whether 2 years of investigation could undo 2 seconds of pulling a trigger. He'd tracked the anonymous tip through 7 proxy servers, through encrypted channels that spoke of training. The trail had gone cold at the communication relay, but Vincent had patience. Answers came to those who waited, who watched, who built cases piece by piece. 3 names kept circulating, 3 pack members with means, motive, and opportunity. Owen Carstairs, logistics officer, controlled supply lines, had argued against Dominic's peace initiatives, had the technical skills to mask his identity. Miranda Cross, Vincent's own cousin, communications specialist, managed the relay systems, had access to everything, had lost her mate to human hunters 15 years ago. And Garrett Stone himself, the elder, the mentor, the one who'd trained Marcus, then been exiled for wanting to conquer humans, who'd emerged as leader of Broken Fang rogues, who might have plants inside the pack. Vincent had been investigating for 2 years, ever since James Hayes died, and the circumstances seemed wrong, the intelligence too convenient, the outcome too perfectly aligned with keeping the pack isolated. Had found circumstantial evidence, but nothing concrete, nothing that would stand up to alpha judgment. But Dominic's death had changed everything, had given Vincent permission to push harder, take risks, because 4 days ago, his alpha's twin had died while reinforcements ran through mountain terrain, arrived 4 minutes too late. 4 minutes. Vincent had mapped the terrain, calculated routes, verified timelines. They'd deployed with maximum speed, had run 4 miles in under 20 minutes, faster than human possible. So why had they been too late? The answer was in the emergency call itself, in the timing, in the way Dominic's unit had been positioned perfectly for ambush, in the way rogues had known exactly when and where to strike, in the way reinforcements had been routed through terrain that guaranteed delay. Someone had set them up, had positioned Dominic's unit, had timed the attack, had routed reinforcements to ensure failure. Someone had murdered Dominic as surely as Vincent had murdered James Hayes. And Vincent was going to find them. He shifted to wolf form, let his senses expand, picked up traces from the cabin, Marcus's anger and exhaustion, and something new. Hope. the particular signature of someone who'd remembered how to want things, how to imagine futures beyond surviving. Elara Hayes was changing Marcus, was cracking through centuries of armor, showing him vulnerability wasn't weakness, that trust wasn't suicide, which made her either their salvation or their doom. Vincent ran toward the compound, toward the investigation, toward answers that would either save them or prove conspiracy ran deeper than anyone suspected. Behind him, the sun climbed higher, burning off mist, revealing mountain terrain in sharp relief. The investigation would tell, would reveal whether the pack could be saved or whether conspiracy had already won, had already guaranteed destruction through isolation and paranoia and endless violence. Vincent ran faster, chasing answers, carrying the weight of 2 years' investigation and 40 years' service, and the particular burden of being the one who'd pulled the trigger on a good man. Redemption was earned in actions, not words, was built through patient work and careful investigation and willingness to face truths that would be easier to ignore. He'd earn redemption or die trying. Behind him, in the cabin, Elara held 2 wolf pups and watched Marcus disappear into dawn, felt the weight of what she'd agreed to, not just temporary guardian, something deeper, partnership, standing beside someone who needed help carrying impossible weight. She thought about her father, about James Hayes walking into woods carrying peace proposals, believing in coexistence, trusting communication was possible. He'd been right, and he'd died for being right, had been murdered by people he'd tried to help, used as a pawn, sacrificed to maintain the status quo of fear. Elara wouldn't let that sacrifice be meaningless, would honor her father's belief by proving coexistence was possible, by building bridges, by choosing mercy over vengeance, trust over suspicion, hope over hatred, even if it killed her, because dying while trying to make the world better was more honorable than living safe while it burned. Theo stirred in her arms. Elara stroked his head, felt the wound that was healing impossibly fast. Shifter metabolism was remarkable, supernatural. Proof the world was stranger than human science acknowledged, that mystery existed in margins, that impossible things were just things humanity hadn't learned to understand yet. "You're going to be okay," Elara whispered. "Both of you. I promise. Your parents died protecting you. Your uncle is learning to live for you. And I'm going to make sure you grow up in a world where mercy is possible." The pup looked at her with eyes too intelligent for an animal. Understanding passed between them. Understanding that promises were easy to make and hard to keep, that good intentions didn't guarantee outcomes, that the world was brutal and beautiful simultaneously. But promises still mattered, still shaped futures, still gave direction when everything else was chaos. Elara had made a promise, would keep it or die trying. Day 2 became, day 3 became 4, became a week of routine and healing and trust, slowly building between people who had every reason to remain enemies. And somewhere in the compound, Vincent compiled evidence and built cases and prepared for the moment when truth would surface, when conspiracy would be exposed, when the pack would face a choice between comfortable lies that kept them afraid and uncomfortable truths that might set them free. Everything was converging. Everything was building. Everything was rushing toward confrontation that would either prove Dominic right or prove that idealism died when it met reality, that hope was just naivety, that mercy in a violent world was suicide. The pack didn't know yet, didn't feel the gathering storm, didn't understand that Marcus's choice to trust Elara was the first crack in structures built over centuries, the first step toward either salvation or destruction. But they would learn, they would face it, they would choose, and the world would never be the same. Day 10 arrived with the kind of silence that preceded violence, the kind of quiet that made Marcus's instincts scream danger, even when nothing visible had changed, even when the perimeter sensors showed clear, even when every tactical indicator suggested they were safe. 276 years of war had taught him that silence was the enemy's favorite weapon. That calm was the space between ambushes. That peace was just violence waiting for the right moment to strike. He stood in the war room, staring at the maps that had consumed Vincent's investigation for 2 years. 3 names circled in red. 3 suspects who'd had means and motive to murder James Hayes, to sabotage Dominic's unit, to keep the pack isolated and afraid. Owen Carstairs, Miranda Cross, Garrett Stone. One of them was a traitor, maybe all 3. The evidence was circumstantial, Damning but not conclusive, the kind of case that would tear the pack apart with accusations and suspicions, and the inevitable violence that came when trust shattered. Vincent entered without knocking, his face carrying the particular exhaustion of someone who'd spent the night chasing answers through encrypted files and dead-end leads. His hands were stained with ink, his eyes red-rimmed, his entire posture screaming breakthrough or breakdown. Marcus couldn't tell which. "I found it," Vincent said. His voice was rough, worn down by hours of work and the weight of what he'd discovered. "Found the proof." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. "Show me." Vincent spread files across the table. Communication logs, financial records, movement patterns cross-referenced with every attack, every failure, every death over the past 5 years. The evidence was meticulous, damning, built piece by piece until the picture was undeniable. "It's Owen," Vincent said. "Logistics officer. He's been feeding information to Garrett Stone for 5 years. Every patrol route, every supply line, every weakness in our defenses. He set up Dominic's unit, routed our reinforcements through terrain that guaranteed delay, murdered my brother to keep the pack dependent on martial law instead of diplomatic solutions." Marcus stared at the evidence, felt rage and grief, and something like relief war inside him. Relief that it wasn't Miranda, wasn't Vincent's own cousin carrying that betrayal. Relief that the traitor was identified, could be dealt with, could be eliminated before causing more damage. But the relief was cold comfort against the weight of understanding that someone he'd trusted for 15 years, someone he'd promoted to logistics officer, someone who'd eaten at his table and sworn loyalty to the pack, had been orchestrating their destruction from the inside. "Where is he now?" Marcus asked. "Compound, supply depot. He doesn't know we know." "Keep it that way," Marcus said. His voice was alpha command, cold and absolute. "Lock down the compound. No one in or out. Assemble the council. We do this by pack law. Public accusation, public judgment, public execution if he's guilty." He paused, and the weight of 276 years pressed down like mountains. "And get Elara," Marcus continued. "She deserves to see this. Deserves to know who orchestrated her father's murder." Vincent hesitated. "Alpha, if Owen realizes we're closing in, if he makes a move, Elara and the pups are isolated at the cabin. They're vulnerable." "Then we move fast," Marcus said. "We end this before he knows it's ending." But wars never ended clean. Marcus had learned that in 276 years of watching careful plans crumble under the chaos of violence, watching surgical strikes become bloodbaths, watching every attempt at justice devolve into vengeance and collateral damage, this time would be no different. This time would be worse, because Owen Carstairs wasn't working alone. The attack came at noon, precise as artillery, devastating as napalm. 15 rogues hit the cabin's perimeter with coordinated strikes that spoke of military training, of someone who'd studied their defensive positions, who knew exactly where the guards were stationed, exactly how to exploit gaps in coverage. Elara heard the first howls, recognized them as alarm calls, grabbed the silver knife, and moved instinctively into combat mode. Medical training gave way to survival training, the protocols she'd learned in Afghanistan about triage under fire, about protecting patients when the hospital became a war zone, about making impossible choices when everyone needed saving and resources were finite. Theo and Jasper were shifting, panic triggering the transformation between wolf and human, their small bodies unable to maintain either form under the stress. They were crying, terrified, looking to Elara for safety she couldn't guarantee, for protection she might not be able to provide. "Bathroom," Elara commanded, her voice carrying the kind of authority that came from years of giving orders in crisis. "Now, both of you." She carried them to the most defensible room, barricaded the door with everything she could move, grabbed her emergency pack with medical supplies and the satellite phone Marcus had given her for exactly this scenario. The call connected on the first ring. "We're under attack," Elara said. 15 hostiles, maybe more. I've got the pups secured, but the perimeter is being overrun." Marcus's voice came through tight with barely controlled rage. "Hold position. We're coming. 10 minutes. "I don't have 10 minutes, Elara said as something heavy slammed against the cabin's front door. "I have maybe 3. "Then make them count," Marcus said. "And Elara, if they breach, if you have to choose between yourself and the pups, you choose them, understand? You save them and you let yourself be taken. Garrett wants hostages. He wants leverage. He won't kill you immediately." The logic was sound, tactical, the kind of calculation that saved lives by accepting some would be lost. but the cold mathematics of it made Elara's blood run ice. "I'm not letting anyone be taken," she said. "You don't have a choice," Marcus replied. 10 minutes, Elara. Hold for 10 minutes and we'll handle the rest." The call ended. Elara stared at the phone, at the timer she'd started counting down from 600 seconds, at the reality that she was outnumbered, outgunned, defending 2 children against trained killers with nothing but a silver knife and the combat skills she'd learned in a war zone half a world away. But medics didn't surrender. Soldiers didn't abandon their posts. And Elara Hayes had already lost her father to these people. She wasn't losing anyone else. The front door splintered inward. Heavy footsteps moved through the cabin, coordinated and methodical, clearing rooms with the precision of Special Forces operators. They knew what they were doing, knew she was trapped, knew the pups were here somewhere. "Bathroom door," a voice called. "Female, familiar somehow. She's barricaded inside." Elara recognized that voice. Miranda Cross, Vincent's cousin, the communications specialist who managed relay systems, who had access to everything, who Vincent had suspected but couldn't prove. Not Owen working alone. Miranda was part of it, maybe the leader. "Stand down," Miranda called through the door. "We don't want to hurt you. We just want the pups. Dominic's sons belong with Pac, not with a human playing mother." "They belong with people who won't use them as pawns," Elara shot back. "With people who won't murder their parents to make political points." Silence. Then Miranda's laugh, bitter and sharp. "You think you understand what happened? You think Dominic and Lydia died for politics?" "I think they died because someone wanted war instead of peace," Elara said. "Someone who couldn't handle the idea that humans and shifters might coexist. Someone who needed an enemy to maintain power." "Smart girl," Miranda said. "Your father was smart too. Walked into those woods carrying peace proposals, believing in dialogue, trusting that we were reasonable. That trust got him killed." "By you?" "By necessity," Miranda corrected. James Hayes was going to give Marcus exactly what he wanted. Treaty, coexistence, integration with human society. And that would have destroyed us, would have made us visible, made us targets, made us dependent on human tolerance instead of our own strength. "So you killed him," Elara said. "Set up my father, used Vincent as a weapon, kept the Pack isolated and afraid." "I kept the Pack alive," Miranda snapped. "Marcus has spent 2 centuries hiding, running, apologizing for what we are. Dominic wanted to accelerate that, wanted to come out of shadows, reveal ourselves, trust that humans would accept us. They were fools, and fools get people killed." Footsteps retreated. Elara heard low voices conferring, heard the unmistakable sound of weapons being loaded, prepared. They were done talking, done negotiating. They were going to breach the door, take the pups by force, and Elara would have to choose between fighting and dying or surrendering and hoping Marcus arrived in time. The choice should have been easy, should have been tactical, should have been the cold mathematics that said 2 children's lives mattered more than 1 adult's pride. But Elara had spent her entire career refusing to accept that math, had disobeyed orders to save an Afghan child, had lost her career rather than walk away from someone who needed help, had built her entire identity around the belief that every life mattered, that no one was expendable, that sometimes the right choice was the one that looked like suicide. She'd promised these pups they'd be safe, had promised Marcus she'd protect them, had promised herself she wouldn't let fear dictate her choices. Promises mattered, even when keeping them was impossible. The door exploded inward, blown off its hinges by shaped charges that spoke of military ordnance, of someone who had access to materials that shouldn't exist outside government arsenals. Miranda entered first, flanked by 2 massive wolves, with 3 more behind them in human form carrying weapons. Elara stood in front of the pups, knife raised, knowing she was outmatched, but refusing to move, refusing to surrender, refusing to accept that this was how the story ended. "Brave," Miranda said. "Stupid, but brave. Dominic would have liked that about you. Would have said you proved his point about humans being capable of courage." She gestured to her team. "Take her," Miranda ordered. "Restrain her. Don't kill her yet. She's leverage when Marcus arrives. And get those pups." The wolves moved fast, coordination speaking of training and practice, and the kind of teamwork that came from months of drilling together. Elara managed to catch one across the throat with the silver blade, watched him go down screaming as the metal burned through shifter healing. But then the others were on her, forcing her down, pinning her arms, and the knife clattered away across tile. "No!" Theo screamed, his small voice breaking on the word as he shifted to human form, his 3-week-old body becoming a toddler who understood what was happening, who saw Elara being hurt, who tried to fight with fists that couldn't damage anything. Mama no hurt mama. The word froze everyone. Mama. The pup had claimed her, had bonded in the way shifter children bonded with caregivers, creating pack bonds that were sacred, unbreakable, the kind of connection that superseded blood. Miranda stared, and something complicated crossed her face. He called you Mama. He's confused! Elara gasped against the pressure on her back, on her lungs. He doesn't understand. He understands perfectly, Miranda said. She looked at her team, and uncertainty flickered. He's bonded. The pups have bonded with a human. That shouldn't be possible. Because you don't want it to be possible, Elara managed. Because if pack bonds can form across species, then everything you believe about humans being enemies is wrong. Everything you've done, everyone you've killed, it's all been for nothing. Miranda's expression hardened. Bring them all, she ordered. We'll let Garrett decide what to do with a human who's infiltrated pack bonds. They dragged Elara out of the bathroom, cable ties cutting into her wrists, blood running from where the takedown had split her lip. Theo and Jasper were crying, trying to reach her, held by wolves who looked distinctly uncomfortable with restraining children who were pack, who were innocent, who were victims of the politics that adults played with other people's lives. Outside, the compound's defenders were down. 6 wolves dead or wounded, blood staining pine needles, the smell of violence thick in mountain air. More rogues were arriving, called in by Miranda's success, gathering for whatever came next. And then Marcus arrived like the wrath of God made flesh. He came through the tree line in full wolf form, massive and terrible, and moving with speed that turned him into a blur. Behind him were 30 pack members, Vincent and Sarah leading the tactical formation, spreading out to engage the rogues with the kind of coordination that spoke of decades fighting together. The battle was brief, brutal, one-sided. Marcus's pack had numbers and training and the righteous fury of people defending their home against invaders. The rogues fought hard, but scattered within minutes, those who could retreat melting into the forest, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Miranda tried to run, got maybe 20 yards before Marcus ran her down, pinned her with jaws around her throat, holding her immobile without killing her. Not yet. Not until she'd answered for everything. Vincent shifted to human form, approached carefully. Alpha, we have her. We have Owen, too. He tried to sabotage our response, but Sarah caught him. They're both in custody. Marcus released Miranda, shifted back, stood over her with eyes blazing gold, an expression carved from granite. You betrayed Pack, he said. His voice was quiet, deadly, carrying the weight of centuries. You murdered my brother. You orchestrated attacks that killed 6 Pack members. You conspired with Garrett Stone to destroy everything we've built. I tried to save us, Miranda gasped. Tried to save us from your weakness, from Dominic's idealism, from the fantasy that humans would ever accept us as anything other than threats. You murdered James Hayes, Marcus continued. A man who came offering peace, who wanted treaty, who believed we deserved protection instead of persecution. He died to keep us hidden, Miranda said, to keep us safe. He died because you're a coward, Elara said. She'd been released from restraints, was holding Theo and Jasper who were clinging to her like lifelines. You're so afraid of humans that you'd rather murder good people than risk finding out we're not all monsters, that we might actually help if given the chance. Miranda laughed, broken and bitter. Help? Your species has been hunting ours since we first learned to shift. Every war, every genocide, every pogrom. We've survived by hiding, by being invisible, by trusting no one. And you want us to believe one dead father with peace proposals changes centuries of persecution? Not one father, Marcus said quietly. Thousands, millions, humans who fought beside us in every war, who've kept our secrets, who've died protecting us because they believed coexistence was possible. James Hayes was just the most recent, and you killed him because his existence challenged your worldview. He looked at his pack, at 30 faces watching this moment, waiting to see what justice looked like when the crimes were against Pack itself, when the betrayer was family. Pack law gives me authority to execute traitors, Marcus said. No trial, no appeal. I could kill you both right now and no one would question it. Miranda met his eyes, defiant even in defeat. Then do it. Prove me right. Prove you're the monster I always said you were. No, Marcus said. I'm going to prove Dominic right instead. He turned to Vincent. Take them to the compound. Hold them in isolation. Tomorrow we hold formal trial. The pack will hear evidence. We'll vote on judgment. We'll decide collectively what justice looks like. The shock rippled through everyone present. Formal trial meant giving voice to traitors, meant allowing them to present their case, meant trusting the pack to choose wisely instead of just obeying alpha command. It was the kind of risk that Dominic had always advocated for, the kind of mercy that Marcus had always resisted, the kind of leadership that trusted the pack instead of controlling them. Alpha, Vincent said carefully. That's dangerous. That gives them platform to spread dissent, to argue their case. The pack might fracture. Then let it fracture, Marcus said. Better that than me being the tyrant Miranda accused me of becoming. Better that than leading through fear instead of trust. Better that than proving her right about what I am. He looked at Elara, at the way she held his nephews who'd called her mama, who'd bonded with her across species lines that shouldn't have been crossable. Dominic believed in democracy, Marcus said. Believed the pack was stronger when everyone had voice. When decisions came from consensus instead of command, I'm going to honor that belief, even if it costs me everything. The compound's meeting hall was full. 50 pack members gathered to witness what would either be justice or disaster, what would either prove Marcus's new approach viable or demonstrate that mercy in war was suicide. Owen and Miranda stood chained in silver at the center, surrounded by guards, facing judgment from people they'd betrayed. Their expressions were defiant, unrepentant, carrying the certainty of zealots who believed their cause justified any atrocity. Marcus stood before the assembly, with Elara beside him holding Theo and Jasper, with Vincent and Sarah flanking them, presenting united front that said this was pack decision, not alpha dictate. We're here because 2 members of our pack conspired with enemies, Marcus began. Because they murdered humans seeking peace, because they orchestrated attacks that killed our own, because they betrayed everything we claim to stand for. He let the words settle, watched faces process the accusations. Owen Carstairs and Miranda Cross, you're charged with treason, with conspiracy, with murder. The evidence is substantial. Communications between you and Garrett Stone spanning 5 years. Financial records showing payments, movement patterns matching every attack. Testimony from survivors. The case is overwhelming. Then why are we here? Owen spoke for the first time, his voice carrying contempt. Why this theater? You're alpha. Execute us and be done with it. Because Dominic died believing in something better, Marcus said. Believing that pack functioned best when everyone had voice, when justice came from consensus instead of command. I'm going to honor that belief by letting you make your case, by letting the pack hear your reasoning, and then by trusting them to choose correctly. Miranda straightened, and something like hope flickered in her expression. You'll let us speak? Let us explain? You'll have exactly what James Hayes never got, Marcus said. You'll have a fair hearing. You'll have the chance to present your case. And then you'll face judgment from people who've heard all sides. He paused. Unlike my brother, Marcus continued, his voice going cold. Unlike Dominic, who died in ambush without warning, without trial, without chance to defend himself. Unlike James Hayes, who died carrying peace proposals without opportunity to present them. You'll get mercy you never showed others. The hall went silent. Speak, Marcus said. Tell us why you did it. Tell us why murder and betrayal were necessary. Make us understand. Miranda and Owen exchanged glances. Then Miranda stepped forward as much as chains allowed. I did it to save us, she said. Her voice was clear, steady, carrying conviction. Marcus is old. 276 years of hiding, of running, of apologizing for what we are. He's internalized human fear, has convinced himself that we're the problem, that we need to adapt, to integrate, to become acceptable to a species that's hunted us since we first learned to shift. She looked around the hall, meeting eyes. But we're not the problem, Miranda continued. They are, humans. They're the ones who killed my mate 15 years ago, shot him with silver bullets while he was protecting their livestock from actual threats. They're the ones who've driven us into smaller and smaller territories, who've destroyed our habitats, who forced us to live in shadows while they build cities and highways and shopping malls over our ancestral lands. Some heads nodded, some faces showed understanding. James Hayes represented the final step, Miranda said. Integration. Treaty. Coming out of hiding. Marcus and Dominic wanted to trust him, wanted to believe that one good human meant all humans would accept us. But I knew better. I knew that exposure would make us targets, that humans would study us, weaponize us, hunt us to extinction or capture us for experiments. "So you killed him," Elara said. Her voice cut through the hall like silver blade. "Killed a man who wanted to help, who'd spent his career protecting endangered species, who believed you deserved to exist." "I killed a threat," Miranda corrected. "Just like Owen sabotaged operations that would have exposed us. Just like we've been protecting this pack for 5 years while Marcus grew softer, weaker, more willing to compromise our survival for idealistic fantasies." "And Dominic?" Marcus asked. His voice was quiet, dangerous. "My brother. Your packmate. You set him up to die. Why?" "Because he was accelerating your weakness," Miranda said without hesitation. "Was pushing for immediate contact with humans, was planning to reveal ourselves, was going to destroy centuries of careful survival because he believed in his heart that coexistence was possible. He was wrong, and his wrongness would have gotten us all killed." "So you murdered him instead," Marcus said. "I saved the pack," Miranda insisted. "Eliminated the threat before it metastasized. Made hard choices that you were too soft to make." The hall erupted, voices shouting both support and condemnation. Pack members arguing, fracturing along lines that had probably existed for years, now exposed by Miranda's unapologetic confession. Marcus raised his hand and silence fell. Alpha Command still worked, still bent necks and demanded obedience even when he was trying to build something different. "You've made your case," Marcus said. "Now the pack decides. Those who believe Owen and Miranda's actions were justified, who believe exposure to humans represents existential threat, who believe Dominic's idealism was dangerous, stand to my right. Those who believe treason and murder violated pack law, who believe James Hayes deserved a chance to present his peace proposals, who believe Dominic's vision of coexistence was worth pursuing, stand to my left." The moment stretched. 30 seconds. 60. People looking at each other, weighing choices, understanding that this vote would define what the pack was, what it believed, whether it would evolve or remain trapped in cycles of fear. Slowly, people moved. Vincent and Sarah went left immediately. 20 pack members followed them, but 15 went right, stood with Miranda's position, if not her methods. The divide was narrower than Marcus had hoped, closer than Elara had expected. The pack was fracturing in real time, showing divisions that had existed beneath surface for decades. "Those in the middle," Marcus said, "those uncertain. You have voice too. Speak." An older wolf stepped forward. Marcus recognized him. Thomas Reed, elder, Vietnam veteran, someone who'd fought beside humans in jungles half a century ago. "I fought in Vietnam," Thomas said. His voice carried the weight of experience. "Fought beside human soldiers, good men who bled red same as me. Some of them knew what I was, kept the secret, died protecting it. Not because they were forced, because they believed it mattered, because they'd seen me save their lives and decided I deserved to live." He paused. "James Hayes was one of those men," Thomas continued. "Not literally, but the same spirit, the same belief that coexistence was possible. That fear didn't have to rule us. Miranda killed him before we could discover if he was right. That's not protection. That's cowardice. That's letting fear make decisions that should be made by wisdom." Thomas moved left. 5 others followed him. The vote was decided. 35 left, 15 right. Not unanimous, not even overwhelming. But majority had spoken. "The pack has decided," Marcus said. "Owen Carstairs and Miranda Cross, you're found guilty of treason, of murder, of betraying pack trust. The sentence under pack law is death." Both accepted the judgment with defiance intact. Miranda smiled, bitter and certain. "You'll see," she said. "You'll expose yourselves to humans and they'll destroy you. Everything I did will be proven necessary, and you'll die regretting that you didn't listen." "Maybe," Marcus said. "Or maybe we'll prove you wrong. Maybe Dominic was right. Maybe coexistence is possible. Maybe fear isn't the only tool for survival." He nodded to Vincent. "Execute the sentence, quick and clean." Vincent drew the silver blade, moved behind the prisoners. The execution was efficient, professional, over in seconds. Owen and Miranda died without ceremony, without speeches, their bodies proof that even in packs trying to evolve, some betrayals still demanded absolute consequence. The hall emptied slowly, quietly. Pack members processing what had happened, what it meant, whether justice had been served, or whether they'd just witnessed the beginning of something worse. Marcus found Elara outside, sitting on steps with Theo and Jasper asleep in her arms. The pups had shifted back to wolf form, exhausted by trauma and stress and the violence that had shattered their temporary peace. "It's done," Marcus said. He sat beside her, careful not to disturb the pups. "Justice is served." "Is it?" Elara asked. 15 pack members voted that Miranda was right. 15 people believe humans are the enemy, that my father deserved to die, that coexistence is impossible fantasy. 15 out of 50, Marcus corrected. That means 35 believe otherwise. 35 are willing to try. That's more than I had yesterday, more than Dominic had when he died. But it's not everyone, Elara said. You're trying to build something new, and a third of your pack thinks you're wrong. That divide will fester, will grow, will tear you apart from inside. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her hand, laced their fingers together. Dominic used to say that perfect unity was impossible, that any group large enough to matter would have disagreements, factions, people pulling in different directions. The goal wasn't to eliminate dissent. It was to build structures that channeled disagreement into dialogue instead of violence. Today's vote did that, Marcus continued. Those 15 who disagree, they had their say. They were heard. They lost the vote, but they weren't silenced or executed or exiled just for holding different opinions. That's growth. That's evolution. That's choosing democracy over dictatorship, even when dictatorship would be easier. And if they revolt? If those 15 decide your mercy is weakness and try to overthrow you? Then we deal with it, Marcus said. Together, with all the tools we've built, with the alliances we're forming, with the belief that fighting for something better is worth the risk of failing. He looked at the pups. They called you Mama, Marcus said softly. Theo bonded. That's sacred. That's permanent. He's claimed you as pack, as family. I know, Elara whispered, and I don't know what that means. Don't know how to be mother to shifter children. Don't know if I'm strong enough, wise enough, capable enough. You're strong enough, Marcus said. You stood against 15 rogues with nothing but a knife. You protected them against impossible odds. You kept your promise even when keeping it looked like suicide. That's exactly the kind of strength they need, the kind that comes from conviction instead of power, from choosing mercy even when violence would be easier. He paused. And you won't do it alone, Marcus added. You'll have me, have the pack, have everyone who voted today that coexistence is possible. We'll figure it out together. What if we fail? Elara asked. What if Miranda was right? What if exposing ourselves to humans gets everyone killed? Then we fail trying, Marcus said. And that's more honorable than surviving in fear, more meaningful than hiding forever, more worth fighting for than anything I've done in 276 years of just trying to survive. The sun was setting, painting mountains in shades of gold and red, illuminating the territory that North Ridge Pack had defended for centuries. In the compound below, pack members were rebuilding, treating wounded, processing what had happened and what came next. And in the cabin that had started everything, that had become sanctuary and battleground and the birthplace of something new, 2 wolf pups slept on the chest of a human woman who'd chosen mercy over vengeance, trust over fear, hope over the comfortable certainty of hatred. 3 weeks passed in steady rhythm of healing and rebuilding. The pack absorbed what had happened, processed the trial, adapted to new reality where dissent was voiced rather than suppressed, where leadership meant trust rather than control. And when the full moon rose on the 21st night after the trial, the claiming ceremony happened with entire pack witnessing. Marcus Volkov claimed Elara Hayes as mate, as Luna, as equal partner in leadership. The marking was traditional, ancient, powerful. When Marcus's teeth broke her skin, when his shifter essence merged with her human biology, something unprecedented happened. The mark glowed not just silver, but gold, moon-blessed, indicating bond recognized by forces older than nations, older than wars, older than the division between human and shifter. Isla Winters, the elder who presided, stared in wonder. Moon touched, she whispered. The last time I saw this was 1823, when my mate and I bonded. It means the moon goddess approves, means the bond serves larger purpose than individual happiness, means you're both part of something that transcends what either of you are alone. What does it mean practically? Elara asked. She was still processing the marking, the way her senses had sharpened, the way she could feel pack bonds like threads connecting her to 50 individuals, the way Marcus's emotions bled into hers and hers into his. "It means you're no longer entirely human," Isla said. "The bond has changed you, given you extended lifespan to match Marcus's. Enhanced healing, empathic connection to pack members. You'll age slower now, live centuries instead of decades, be able to sense threats to pack, coordinate with Marcus in ways that require no words." She paused, and something like hope lit her ancient eyes. "It means the moon goddess has blessed human shifter bonds again," Isla continued, "has shown that coexistence isn't just possible. It's sacred. It's necessary. It's what we were always meant to be before fear and violence divided us." The ceremony concluded with pack howls rising to the moon, with Theo and Jasper, now 4 weeks old and growing strong, adding their small voices to the chorus. With Vincent standing beside Marcus as Beta, redeemed through investigation and truth. With Sarah as enforcer, as the voice of those who'd loved Dominic and now fought to honor his memory by building what he'd dreamed of. And with Elara Hayes, former combat medic, dishonored soldier, orphaned daughter, standing as Luna of the North Ridge Pack, proving that mercy was stronger than fear, that trust could be earned even from enemies, that hope was worth fighting for even when it looked like suicide. The treaty with DIA was formalized 6 months later. Limited contact, mutual non-aggression, information sharing on genuine threats. It was tentative, fragile, could shatter at any moment if either side betrayed trust. But it existed, was real. Was James Hayes's legacy finally realized? 1 year after the trial, after the executions, after the choosing, the territory had changed in ways both visible and subtle. The compound had expanded, integrated human technology with shifter instincts. Solar panels and satellite communications alongside traditional dens and gathering spaces. The hybrid of two worlds learning to coexist, not by erasing differences, but by celebrating what each brought to the whole. Elara stood on the cabin porch one morning in October, watching Marcus teach Theo and Jasper to track in the forest. The boys were 18 months old now, stable shifters, bilingual in human speech and wolf communication, learning to navigate worlds that their parents had died trying to unite. They moved with the confidence of children who'd never known a time when they weren't wanted, weren't loved, weren't the center of someone's world. "You're thinking too loud," Marcus said without turning. His new connection to her meant he felt her moods, her concerns, her fears even from 100 yards away. "I'm pregnant," Elara said. The words felt too big, too impossible, too fraught with uncertainty. Marcus froze, shifted to human, closed the distance in seconds, eyes wide with wonder and terror. "Are you certain?" "3 tests, all positive. I'm 8 weeks along." Marcus pulled her close, and Elara felt his emotions crash through their bond. Joy and fear and overwhelming love all tangled together with the weight of knowing they were creating something unprecedented. A child born of human and shifter, of moon-blessed bond, of love that had grown from tragedy and violence and the choice to trust when everything argued for fear. "What if it doesn't work?" Marcus whispered. "What if the genetics are incompatible? What if I lose you, lose the child, lose everything I've finally learned to want?" "Then we face it together," Elara said, "like we've faced everything else, with hope, with trust, with the belief that trying is worth the risk." She placed his hand on her still flat belly. "Dominic believed coexistence was possible," she said. "We've proved that. Now we're going to prove something more. That love can bridge any divide. That family can be built across species. That the future doesn't have to repeat the violence of the past." Marcus kissed her, deep and desperate and full of promises they'd both keep or die trying. When they broke apart, Theo and Jasper were watching from the tree line, small faces curious and excited. "Uncle Marcus crying?" Theo asked. His speech was getting better every day, the lisp fading as his human form strengthened. "Happy tears," Marcus managed. "Come here, little warriors. I have news." The boys ran to them, climbed up Marcus's legs with the ease of children who'd never known fear of rejection, who'd been loved unconditionally since the moment they'd bonded with Elara. Marcus caught them, held them with one arm while keeping the other around Elara. "You're going to be big brothers," Marcus said. "You're going to have a little brother or sister, someone who'll need you to teach them, protect them, show them how to be brave." Theo's eyes went wide. Baby? Our baby? Our baby, Elara confirmed, kneeling to be at their eye level. Our family is growing. Jasper whooped with joy, his voice echoing through the forest. Big brother, he declared. Best big brother ever. They celebrated there on the porch, 4 people who'd found family in the wreckage of loss, who'd built love from the ruins of violence, who'd chosen hope when fear would have been easier. And in the months that followed, as Elara's pregnancy progressed without complications, as the human-shifter hybrid grew healthy and strong against all odds, as the impossible became undeniable reality, the pack learned something fundamental. They learned that walls built from fear were prisons, not protection. That mercy wasn't weakness, but the hardest form of strength. That trusting others with your vulnerability was terrifying and necessary, and the only way to build something worth protecting. They learned that Dominic had been right, that coexistence was possible, that love could bridge any divide, that the future didn't have to be war. And when Elara gave birth 9 months later to a healthy daughter, with her mother's eyes and her father's strength, with the ability to shift that proved hybrid vigor instead of genetic failure, with a voice that would one day speak for both human and shifter worlds, the pack learned one final lesson. They learned that hope was stronger than fear, that mercy was stronger than violence. That love, in the end, was worth every risk, every sacrifice, every choice to trust when logic argued for suspicion. The daughter was named Elara Hayes Volkov. Dominica for the uncle who died believing in better futures. Hayes for the grandfather who died trying to build them. Volkov for the family that had claimed her before birth, that would protect her with every breath, that would teach her that being bridge between worlds was the greatest honor and heaviest burden she'd ever carry. And on the night of her birth, under full moon that blessed the impossible child with light that was silver and gold simultaneously, the pack howled their acceptance, howled their commitment, howled their promise that this child, this symbol of everything they'd fought for, would grow up in a world where mercy was possible, where trust could be earned, where hope was stronger than fear. Marcus held his daughter, held his mate, held his nephews who were sons in all ways that mattered, looked at the family he'd built from the ruins of loss and grief and 276 years of learning that surviving alone was hollow victory. And for the first time in centuries, Marcus Volkov felt something he'd forgotten existed. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose, the knowledge that he was fighting for something worth protecting, building something worth the risk, creating a future where his children, all his children, could live without the fear that had defined every generation before them. Dominic would be proud, Elara whispered, her voice tired but happy as she gazed at their newborn daughter. Marcus kissed her forehead, looked at the daughter who proved his brother right, who justified every sacrifice, who represented the future they'd both died and lived to create. He is proud, Marcus said. I can feel it. In the wind, in the moonlight, in the way everything worked out exactly as he believed it would if we just had courage to try. Not with war, but with love. Not with fear, but with hope. Not with ending, but with beginning. The Alpha's reckoning was complete, not in vengeance, not in violence, but in the choice to build something better than what had been. In the courage to trust, in the wisdom to forgive, in the strength to hope. And in the mountains of Montana, under skies that had watched centuries of violence, a new story began. A story about mercy, about family, about love strong enough to bridge any divide, about hope that refused to die even when everything argued it should. The pack had arrived to kill. They'd found their future sleeping on her chest, and the Alpha had made her Luna. Not because she was strong, but because she'd shown him strength came in forms he'd forgotten. Not through power, but through mercy. Not through fear, but through love. And that, in the end, made all the difference.